The summer of 1914 was one of the most beautiful in European memory. A brilliant sun bathed the grand boulevards of Vienna, the magnificent theatres of Paris, and the bustling docks of London. At that time, the world was at the pinnacle of prosperity. It was the Belle Époque, the beautiful era. People believed that with the advent of electricity, automobiles, and global trade, war had become an obsolete concept, a relic of a barbaric past. But beneath this glamorous veneer, a malignant tumor was silently growing. Europe was not a unified bloc, it was a chessboard of aging empires, fueled by wounded pride and deep-seated paranoia. At exactly 11 a.m. on July 28, 1914, a telegraph clerk in Vienna pressed the keys. The message was brief, its language dry and bureaucratic. It was addressed to Belgrade, Serbia. But as those electromagnetic signals traveled along the cables, they carried more than just a declaration of war. They carried a death sentence for an entire generation. The telegram read, "The royal and imperial government of Austria-Hungary, in order to protect its rights and interests, henceforth considers itself in a state of war with Serbia." With those few words, the old world order collapsed. Why did the assassination of an archduke in a remote city like Sarajevo lead to the deaths of farmers in America or soldiers in Australia? The answer lies not in the assassin's bullet, but in a mechanical trap the great powers had set for themselves, the alliance system. To understand why July 28 happened, we must look into the psychology of those in power in Vienna. The most pivotal figure was not the elderly Emperor Franz Joseph, but the chief of the general staff, Konrad von Hotzendorf. Konrad was the embodiment of anxiety and aggression. He believed that the Austro-Hungarian Empire was a multi-ethnic structure rotting from within. To Konrad, Serbia was not just a neighbor, it was an existential threat. He believed that if Serbia were not crushed, the minority ethnicities within the empire would rise up and tear Austria-Hungary apart. Historical records show that in the single year leading up to the assassination, Konrad proposed war with Serbia no fewer than 25 times. Every time there was a minor diplomatic friction, his answer was always the same: we must strike Serbia. When Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated on June 28, Konrad did not mourn. On the contrary, he felt relieved. Finally, he had the perfect excuse. To the hawks in Vienna, the death of the Archduke was a gift from destiny to execute the war they had long craved. They did not seek justice, they sought a conquest to salvage the honor of a dying empire. Austria-Hungary was aggressive, but they were a giant with feet of clay. They did not dare fire a shot without a guarantee from their powerful brother to the north, the German Empire. July 5, 1914, marks one of the darkest milestones in history. German Kaiser Wilhelm II issued what became known as the blank check. Berlin promised to support Vienna unconditionally, regardless of what Vienna chose to do. Why did Germany take such a risk? The leadership in Berlin, led by Chancellor Bethmann Hollweg, made a great miscalculation. They believed that if Austria attacked Serbia swiftly, Russia would be caught off guard and fail to intervene. They gambled that the Russian Tsar would not protect a nation that assassinates royalty. Germany bet that the war would remain localized in the Balkans. But when you hand the keys to the armory to a desperate and bloodthirsty regime like Austria-Hungary, you lose control. Germany gave Austria-Hungary the power to detonate all of Europe. This was no longer diplomacy, it was a gamble on the lives of millions. At this moment, the fate of the world rested in the hands of a lonely man in St. Petersburg, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. He faced what might be the most agonizing choice in history. Russia had an honor pact with Serbia. If he abandoned Serbia, Russia's prestige would vanish, and he would be seen as a traitor to the Slavic bloodline. But if he protected Serbia, he would trigger the alliance with France and plunge the entire continent into a sea of blood. Right now, I want to pause and ask you, the person watching this story. If you were the Russian Tsar at that moment, standing between national honor and world peace, what would you choose? Would you be willing to sacrifice Serbia, a small ally, to save tens of millions of others from death? Or would you choose to stay true to your word, regardless of the price being the destruction of your own empire? Please leave your thoughts in the comments. Your answer reveals whether you lean toward political pragmatism or moral idealism. Because Nicholas II himself tormented himself with this very question until the final seconds. To justify the war, Austria-Hungary drafted an ultimatum. It was meticulously designed to be unacceptable. Austria demanded the right to send its own police to investigate on Serbian soil, a blatant violation of sovereignty. Serbia, in a desperate attempt to maintain peace, accepted 9 out of the 10 terms. Even Kaiser Wilhelm II, upon reading the response, exclaimed, "A brilliant result. Every reason for war has vanished." But in Vienna, the generals had already locked the plans. At exactly 11 a.m. on July 28, the declaration of war was sent. That night, darkness swallowed the Danube River. The Austro-Hungarian monitor SMS Bodrog steamed into position. The first artillery shells slammed into Belgrade at dawn on July 29. Those shells did more than destroy buildings, they officially shattered humanity's dream of peace. As smoke rose from Belgrade, the alliance system began to operate like an automatic machine. Russia began to mobilize, Germany felt threatened, and France began to prepare its guns. This is the greatest tragedy, the helplessness of humans before the systems they created. In the final hours, the Tsar of Russia, Nicky, and the German Kaiser, Willy, 2 cousins, sent each other personal telegrams pleading for the other to stop. But their generals brushed them aside. Why? Because of something called the railway timetable. In 1914, war was a massive logistical puzzle. Mobilization plans were programmed down to the minute on train tracks. The generals told the kings, "Your Majesty, if we stop for even 1 hour, the enemy's army will pour across the border. We cannot rescind the mobilization order." Germany's Schlieffen Plan required them to knock out France in 42 days before Russia could fully mobilize. Therefore, the moment Russia mobilized to save Serbia, Germany was forced to attack France. The most powerful men in the world realized they were merely passengers on a train with no brakes, hurtling toward an abyss. As the sun set on July 28, 1914, Europe changed forever. 4 years later, 20 million people were dead. 4 great empires had vanished from the map. Splendid cities had become craters of mud, machine guns, and poison gas. The events of July 28 teach us a bitter lesson: war does not always start from hatred, but from fear and rigid systems. When great powers are bound by military commitments and mutual distrust, a tiny spark in the Balkans is enough to incinerate the entire world order. Today, we look back at this event not to find winners or losers, but to ask ourselves, have we truly learned how to defuse the fuse, or are we still living in a world of new alliances and new ultimatums?